Hey, welcome to Resilience Radio. I'm your host, Irvin Eisenberg. I'm the host of the show and owner of Resilience Occupational Therapy. As always, the opinions on this show are not necessarily shared by me. I like to just feature a wide variety of perspectives because everyone has their own needs. Additionally, nothing's meant to be medically prescriptive or diagnostic in any way. Today is a second conversation with Steve Watson, who is a Taoist practitioner. He does internal martial arts, movement, meditation, and poetry. And I wanted to continue this conversation with him. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's it's gladdening in my heart to spend time with somebody that is interested in the health of the planet and the health of the people upon the planet. So it's really nice.
So as a health show, I feature and a show about resilience. I feature a lot of different people because for a lot of different perspectives. And I'm curious what health means to you.
Ooh, I like it. So health, the English word health comes from the Old English hael, H-A-E-L. Hail later become hale, H-A-L-E, which is a term so important to the human condition that we now use it only when we're talking about soup. And the original term hale, H-A-E-L, means wholeness or whole, W-H-O-L-E. And so health is wholeness. Like that's what we're talking about. And when I'm teaching this topic, I often invite people to tell me what the constituent facets of a human are. And generally, after some discussion and, nerding out, people will arrive at saying body, mind, spirit, or something like that, whatever their current kind of terminology is. And I think that's fair enough. Like that's a reasonable way to look at it. I don't know what the truth is, but that's a reasonable way to understand things. And if we think about it, the body in time can only be in the present. So we can break the body, the human being down into body, mind, spirit, and we can break time down into future, past, and present. And of those three choices of time, the body must be in the present moment. It has never and can never be anywhere else. And then the question is, can the heart go into the future? Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to that movie coming out next weekend, Great. Can your heart be in the past? Yeah, are you kidding me? I'm just getting over a breakup, and she left me on Thanksgiving or something. Like, yeah, the heart can be somewhere besides now. Can the mind be on the future? I think that's an easy yes. You probably have a plan for after this podcast. Can the mind be on the past? Yeah, I remember what I had for dinner last night. Can the spirit be in the future? Can the spirit be in the past? Well, I don't know. How could I tell you the answer to that? My guess is that if the mind and heart can do it, probably the spirit can. That'd be my guess. But for my argument, it doesn't matter if the spirit can go to the future or past. So I'm going to just say they can. It can, but it doesn't really matter. So the point that I'm getting at is the mind and the heart can be other than in the present, which is where the body is imprisoned or stuck. That is not a description of wholeness.
Okay.
If the mind is other than where the body is, and the heart, let's say, is other than where the mind and the body are, and let's say the spirit is wherever it is, the only place they can all be together is in the present moment. The only place that you can be healthy is in the present moment. And I would argue that any condition which draws or invites or pushes or lures the heart or the mind or perhaps the spirit away from the present moment is unhealthy. It doesn't mean that if you think about tomorrow, you immediately get sick, right? But that is an unhealthy action. just because it's possible doesn't mean it's healthy, right? Like,
Okay.
it's possible to smoke cigarettes, it's possible to jump off a building. It doesn't argue that it's healthy. So that's my kind of foundational understanding of healthiness or wholeness. And this is something that we explore in meditation practice, in Qigong practice, in Tai Chi practice. So, for example, when we're doing our choreography, is somebody thinking about how they kind of messed up the previous move, but they're moving forward on the next move? Are they getting excited about the move coming up because that's their favorite move, which means they're not present for the move they're supposedly doing? And so then we'd see a poor performance of their form, their choreography, or an unhealthy representation of that part of their choreographic practice. And so I'll talk about that in terms of health, not just, hey, you did that wrong, I'm the teacher, let's get it right. But like, well, this is something that happens in your life, right? This is you not paying attention to driving. You're already home, but your body's stuck in the car in traffic. And so you have this unhealthiness that is going to put you at increasing risk of road rage or getting in an accident or causing somebody else to get in an accident or whatever it might be. And the only answer is to be fully present. And the sort of practices that I am involved in, and it's not exclusive to me, it's not like I'm special here, but the practices that I'm interested in that are familiar to many people work to help us return to presence or wholeness or health and maintain a level of value for that and reduce the incidence of fighting against that. So some people will get themselves whole or present, right? But they're not happy about it. they're going to just kind of persevere until they can, go the way they normally go. And then that's not a healthy way of uh, ticking that box, right?
Okay. So you can have holism without at least in that period of time, without it being healthy, is what
Yeah,
I'm.
I think so. Yeah.
maybe
And
this maybe the spirit isn't there.
yeah, I think that might be it. Like a lot of times people will talk about, because I teach Tai Chi or Tai Chi Chuan as a kind of primary art that I teach. And so often people think, well, that's the one that's very slow, and so you must need a lot of patience for that. And I'll say, well, I don't understand how patience is a positive value, because patience is having a relationship to the present moment that is not embracing, and you're waiting for the end of whatever this present thing is, right? So if a waiting room is about the next room when you see the doctor, it's not about this room. The room is not called the be here and enjoy it room.
Hmm.
It's a wait for the next thing. So even if somebody successfully waits, they're really just looking at the clock,
Hmm.
wondering what they're late for or how long and can they do it. And it's a relatively um, antagonistic relationship to it, as opposed to just be present.
Hmm.
Be present.
So you're not, because you're not waiting. Patience implies waiting,
Patience implies waiting,
and
and
you
it
want.
implies that you did it well, right? Because patience, people would say that's an admirable quality,
Mhm.
right? That's like saying you're really good at heroin, like you do it so well, like you're really good with the needles and stuff. Like, all right, I guess you could be really good at the thing that's clearly not really good, but that's not my interest, right?
So when you talk about being whole and having that sort of an alignment, at least in that moment, of body, mind, spirit, heart,
Yes,
maybe not spirit, we're not. um, there's this idea of being here and that being healthy, and it's
yes,
definitely, I could be very present where I am right now and still not be getting wood from outside to bring to my wood stove. And if I'm not
Yes.
actively thinking about that, then
Mhm.
maybe I'm healthy in this moment, but that might be at the expense of being able to be warm and survive through the winter.
Right.
When is being only in the present only being in the present um always the healthiest place to be?
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. But one of the things that you can do in the present is plan the future, right? I'm making an appointment to do the wood, or to, drop somebody off at the doctor's tomorrow, or whatever it might be. So you can make those plans, but when your heart gets attached to them, or your mind gets attached to them, your heart or your mind get drawn out of the present moment, right? So we see this if you were making plans for something this weekend and you didn't really notice it, you didn't pay attention to it, but you pulled a few strings and levers and everything worked out just right, and you're going to get your two friends to both make it, and you never get to see them both, and it's a concert with this artist you really like, and everything's fallen into place, and you got reservations where you want. um, and then it falls through, like your car breaks down or whatever it might be, or snowstorm or something, and then you're kind of devastated, right? That's because you got so invested in it, in this case emotionally, right?
Hmm.
And we see that the unhealth of it when it doesn't turn out the way you imagined, and you suffer. If instead, at the moment that you find out the car is broken down, you're not wounded, you're just make an adjustment and say, well, I'm going to be able to stack the firewood. I have some free time now, and I'll call my friends and we'll make another plan, and I'll apologize to them, or I'll see if maybe the bus can get me there, and you make an adjustment. So often we don't see our investment of the mind or the heart in something in the past or the future, but we're actually getting tied to it or getting pulled to it. So making a plan is fine. Um, but when you're caught up in it, if it pays if it pays off, you never see that you were caught up in it. But when it doesn't, that's when you realize, oh, I was caught up in it, and you suffer, or those around you suffer, and you're in a bad mood, or you're swearing, or you're slamming doors, or you're kind of furious, and you forgot some other appointment now because you're in a mood or whatever. So the kind of measure of that is if you can pivot with equanimity,
Hmm.
right? What we would say describe as going with the flow. If I asked you in that moment, what's your preference right now? Well, I'd prefer if I had made it to the concert and saw my friends. Like, that's fair. Like, I did that. I would like to be doing that, but I'm not suffering when I can't.
Hmm.
Right? Because in this moment, I'm just sitting here in my house and the heat's on, and I took a shower and I ate something. Like, everything's fine. So, the when we talk about patience, when we talk about how we're disconnected from the present moment, right? The term I'm recently been using is, I call it presencing. Like, so the verb is to presence, which is all the things that you would do to bring yourself present in order to be whole, right? So my shortcut term currently is presencing, which hints at a bunch of other lessons that we've done in other classes, but so I call it presencing. But the idea of patience pulling me out of the now, even if I don't notice it, and even if I think well of myself because I'm patient and society says patience is important and valued. Similarly, goals draw us out of the present moment, right? And goals are one of the things that people will say in society are very important. You must have goals, you must pursue them, and then you must celebrate them, when you get to them. And if you are talking to a guidance counselor or a business consultant or a personal trainer or physical therapist or a doctor, they're all going to talk about goals. I want you to lose 10 pounds in 2 months. I want you to be able to lift this weight 20 times a day by the end of the month. And I would argue, and I have argued, that goals are not healthy. They take us out of the moment. What I prefer is to have a direction. A direction is about where you are now and where you're facing and why you're facing there. Right?
Okay.
And so if you continually revise your direction, right, which is the same as perspective, right, curating your perspective, if you're continually revising your direction, it stands to reason you're going to be moving towards some goal, right? Like a preferred outcome. But your work is, and your energies, your states are here. They're just directed a certain way. So I often think that if you're sailing across the Atlantic, let's say 100 years ago, you wake up in the morning and you measure the stars or whatever, and then you say 2 degrees to the left, like we drifted or something. And then in the afternoon, you make another measure and you go 3 degrees to the north. That's all you do. You just keep adjusting your direction. You don't get hung up on, oh my God, when we get to Boston, I can't wait to eat the whatever and can't wait for Boston. I'm daydreaming. That's not going to help you sail. The work of sailing is on the sailboat. And it is helpful to point the sailboat in a preferable direction.
Okay.
And you probably, across that long Atlantic journey, need to continually adjust it. I'm just suggesting every 6 hours. I don't know how it works on a boat like that. And so the same thing for me. I very often as a martial artist, people come in and say, I want to talk about my goals. Here's what I want to learn. And I'll say, I'm the wrong teacher for you. It's not what I'm doing. I can help you become aware of your surroundings and your internal self and learn skills to redirect yourself. And then you're going to end up where you end up. But I'm not hung up on where you end up. I'm interested in how you are as you are going, not where you're going.
Mm-hmm. So, sort of to bring it back to, sometimes people have this idea that meditation and being is this empty mind, this being in the moment means sort of being devoid of past and future. And it sounds like what you're saying is that we can point towards the future without being overly invested.
Yes.
And there's that fluidity, I guess. I mean, my limited understanding of Taoism, you've got a river. The river
Yes.
is generally headed down.
Yes.
And you might want to go, hey, it's not so great if we flood that town over there. But you might also go, well, maybe we'll help people deal with the fact that we're flooding that town.
Mm-hmm.
But the river is going to, each droplet of water in that river is taking a different path, even though the overall river
Yes.
is headed
I
down.
like that. Yeah, that's great.
And the goal, in the most basic sense, is down. But there's the journey of what that means is, I guess, being in the moment.
Well, even
Doesn't negate plans.
I wouldn't say that the particular particles of water have a goal of down. Right.
And actually, the individual particle is probably not that affected by gravity either.
Right. They are simply following the external force, in this case, gravity. My teacher would teach this as a humility lesson. Right. The reason that all the rivers head to the ocean is that the ocean is humble. Right. It's at the lowest point. And so everything flows to it. Everything comes to the humble. Right. So that's where my brain goes thinking about some river analogy. So the particles don't have a goal, but you and I can stand back intellectually and say, I know how rivers and topography works. I mean, this is all going to the delta, and then so it's true to say they're all going there, but it isn't their goal, right? They are just being as water, which will flow and bump into each other and take a infinite variety of paths, all of which essentially are called river. And that river can meander, but however it meanders, it's going to end up in the ocean. Right.
So So the idea that you can plan, or you could be the individual water droplet probably doesn't have a consciousness that it's headed towards the
Right.
ocean, and it
Correct.
might go up to a cloud 3 times before it gets there. But what does healthy planning look like?
Hmm.
I think you've sort of touched on that already, but what is healthy
Yeah.
planning or healthy goals? Even though I
Yeah. I wouldn't use the term goals, but that I understand what you're saying, and that's fine. So healthy planning is, um, you know, so if we're keeping with the ship or the river or sort of metaphors here, I want to be in ship shape, right? If I'm too excited about where I'm going and I'm not able to be seaworthy, that's not going to be very helpful. Like, A, I'm less likely to get there. B, I'm less likely to get there without, damage being done to self or others. And C, I'm less likely to be able to enjoy it when I get there, whatever the there is, right? So I need to be ship shape. I need to tend to the here and now, which would be easy to say diet and exercise and sleep, that sort of thing. So that's fair. But also, the only thing that I know is that I woke up and I'm on a boat, right? So what makes a good life? That's something for everybody to answer. For me, it might include enjoying myself and learning something. Like, to me, that's what's interesting. And so I think it's pretty likely I end up in Boston because this captain has done the journey a lot and the boat is not leaking and the weather looks fine. So it's pretty likely I get to Boston. But what I do know is right now I'm on a boat. So I want to enjoy this and I want to learn something. And for me, enjoying is learning. So it's really just enjoy it, but that will look like learning for me. Um, and then if I don't get to Boston or wherever we're going, I've enjoyed my life, right? If I do get to Boston, I can enjoy my life when I'm there too, right? And so the moment I find out that the captain has changed his mind and is not going to go to Boston, he's going to go to Raleigh or I don't know, Atlanta, I'm not disappointed. I wasn't invested in that. I'm invested in enjoying my life. I had been pointed towards Boston because my sister's there and I wanted to visit her or something. But disappointment is not going to help my life, or anger or frustration. So healthy planning is tending to the ship of self, where you find yourself, and then directing it in a healthful direction for self and others. And continually checking in when your expectations are not met. Checking in to be aware of that and then working to moderate and modulate those expressions of expectation. And that's a really tricky bit because expectations get inserted in new information rather instantaneously and reflexively. So a big part of the practice is learning to recognize that an expectation has been installed. Generally, we only notice expectations when they're not met. Like that's when they kind of stand out to us, right?
So how do you complete a large project with this mindset? How do I even go out to my wood pile and bring that and move that wood to where, if it is in this new location now, I can actually
Yeah.
heat the house.
So so
If
for me,
if in order to be comfortable, right now it's cold outside, I don't want to do that. Oh,
yeah,
tomorrow it's snowing and now it's wet, and I could always
it's
have an
even colder.
excuse. Is that when is going with the flow laziness and not
Yeah. So
healthy
so
planning?
going with the flow. The term in Taoism is wu wei, but I don't think it translates as go with the flow. It translates, my translation for it is swimming with the flow. So one, we become aware of what the flow is. Like, I need wood, but it's rainy, and tomorrow it's cold and damp and rainy, and I don't feel good, right? So that's what the flow is in your story. Um, but swimming is, well, I do want to get across the river or downriver or up, like I want to swim. I'm heading somewhere. So it's a balance of what the flow is and what my urges are, right? And I want to swim in a way that's not overly disruptive to what is already happening. But I don't want to just be a complete bystander and not assert my own agency in the flow that is. So in your example, for me, I know the woodpile has to be moved. And so I would go out, and for me, I would want to enjoy myself, right? So for me, I'd probably have a podcast in my ear, and I'd be working on something martial while I move the wood. I'm working on the SI joint or something, like thinking through that as I do that. But I'm also interested in my enjoyment, right? So at some point I get too cold and tired, right? Then you know what? I'm going to go inside, right? And I moved in the direction of my goal of moving the wood pile. I moved a third of a cord or whatever. For me, I'm not likely to say I must finish this today because the goal is the only thing that's important and cause suffering in myself, right? I would apply myself to the process, the project of moving the wood, and continually put my finger in the wind. Am I enjoying myself? So I'd probably have a podcast. I'm learning something. I'm working on this, whatever that SI joint thing today. But then at some point it's just too cold and my back is too sore. That's enough, right? At that moment, I might also say, yeah, but there's a blizzard coming for the next 3 days, and I really need more of this wood moved. And so that greater enjoyment of staying inside for the blizzard with enough wood might say, you know what, how can I push through this challenge of my back is starting to hurt, I'm getting a little bit damp and miserable, but like the greater enjoyment would be to have more wood moved than just the earliest time I'm ready to check out. And now I'm checking that out. Like I'll start to do that for 10 more minutes. And then is that still the case? Is that still true? Or am I really, really miserable now and forget it? I'm just not going to have a fire during the blizzard, So at no point do I have a goal of I'm going to finish it no matter what, or I'm going to bail out the moment that I'm a little bit uncomfortable. I'm
Hmm.
actually just thinking journey, not destination throughout. And then when I look back, I can see what it amounted to. Like, oh, that's how far I got, whether it's a journey or moving the woodpile. But I'm not caught up in what it must be. So one of my teachings is that anger only comes from frustration. Like the only parent of anger is frustration. And often we don't recognize the causes of our frustration. We recognize the expression of frustration, but we don't see the more subtle causes of it. And I would say that the only parent of frustration is expectation. You can't be frustrated unless you first installed an expectation. And often we don't see the expectation installed. We just notice that it hasn't been met. So let's say you invited me over this afternoon, like, hey, I'd love to have you come over, and we're just gonna have a beer and talk for a bit. If you can come over this afternoon, I'd be like, oh, that's cool, I'm in town. And now if I showed up and I said, by the way, I'm a dog walker and have 16 dogs with me, you'd probably be frustrated. Like, no part of me saying come over had me envisioning you'd have 17 dogs on leashes. Like that's kind of weird, right? And that's just something to deal with. All these dirty dogs and noise and on your new furniture or something, right? So when you said to me, I'd like you to come over, and I said, yeah, I think I'll come over, we'll have a cup of coffee, and you didn't realize that you at that moment set an expectation that I wouldn't have any dogs with me.
So I
But
set the
when I
expectation in myself.
violated it, it became clear that earlier you had an expectation that I wouldn't show up with 17 dogs. You also had an expectation I wouldn't show up with a hippopotamus. You also had an expectation I wouldn't show up with a biker gang. You also, you had innumerable expectations, which you simplify in your brain is I expect he will come over like a normal person would. Like, that's how it's simplified. But as soon as I violate any of those, and then it's frustrating, right? And you're a good host, you might not show it. You'd be like, oh, I love dogs, but there's a frustration, right? And if I kept doing that to you, it might just be anger. It wouldn't be frustration. You'd be like, all right, this is your fifth time coming over. And every time it's a circus. What's right? And maybe you're angry at yourself for inviting me again, right? So, so, again, that idea that anger has the only parent that is called frustration. Frustration has the only parent that is called expectation is not a story that all expectation leads to anger, but that no anger is ever birthed from anything except ultimately expectation.
Because
So
I couldn't just be expecting
working
you to. Sorry.
so working to be aware of our expectations is the first step. Working not to get attached to them is another step, and working not to install them in the next place is another.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
That is not just passively going with the flow. That is very actively
It's swimming.
checking
Yes.
yourself and swimming and
Yes.
and actively sailing the ship. Whatever analogy we have, you're not there. There's no while you're responding to what is there, you're not you're not a passive observer in your own life, even though you're
Correct.
very present.
Correct. Yeah, it's a very engaging art. This kind of Taoist stuff, it's very, very engaging. It's very, very intentional, and it's quite illuminating. The the way that people come to see themselves in the world and their place in the world is quite remarkable in these practices.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your views on health and holism and being
Holism.
present. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed talking with Stephen Watson and learning about his meditation, martial arts, and Taoist practice. If you did enjoy this episode, you should check out next episode, which will be getting more into depth into Stephen's practice alongside his own health struggles with cancer. I hope you enjoyed. The music was brought to you by Aaron Marcus with their tune Some Biological Process. You can check the show notes for full credits on that. Until next time, take care.